What is up, everyone? Welcome back to CRX Paranormal. Hope everyone's doing well. So, tonight, what I want to do is talk about some things we have used in the past doing paranormal investigations and what we're going to be using again when we start doing investigations again. So, hang tight. Okay, so we have spent like over 7 years doing paranormal investigations in our area right here in North Carolina. And so we've used all kinds of different things from just very little to nothing, like a telephone, just a cell phone is all we've used in the past. And then we've used all kinds of unique equipment, which I have sitting around me right now. So things you might want to think about using when you go out and do an investigation. If you've never done it before and you're new to it, one thing to do is this right here, just your basic little charger. It has the little ports, and it's just easy to charge up. It's easy to, I think this is dead now, but charge it up, take it with you, and you can charge your batteries up with whatever you have, your phone, whatever you need to charge. These things can be very important because sometimes spirits can drain your batteries on stuff. So I would definitely consider this right here, taking it with you everywhere you went. Okay, like I said a moment ago, maybe an extra cell phone you could take with you. What I do normally is I don't use the phone that I make phone calls with, text messages like my current phone. I just take an old phone. And what I do is I'll put it on a tripod, set it out, and maybe I'll leave something there. Sometimes I'll leave something like a fidget spinner just sitting there on it. Tell the spirits if you want to move this, go ahead and move it. And then that way, when I go back and look at the film to see if anything happened, I will know for sure. It's always good to have video evidence as much things as you possibly can. So if you have several cell phones or something like that, or extra cameras you want to use, good, do it, because the more you can prove things, it helps people not be a skeptic of what you're doing. So I always recommend another cell phone if you don't have, but maybe one camera. Maybe you're using your cell phone to record with. Maybe you have an old one just laying around. If you do, and it's up to date and pretty current cell phone, go ahead and use that, and that will help. Another thing, like I was saying, the fidget spinner. We had this move one time, not this one particularly. We had one. It was a Batman fidget spinner. What the paranormal Amy has it now. I think her channel now is Conversations with a Curious. But we took fidget spinners out. We had one move at a cemetery one time. It's really interesting. And what I did was I just placed a cell phone down, and me and Marnie walked away. We went and looked at the cemetery, see what we could, maybe come up with, see if we get any words or whatever. So while we were gone, this cell phone was sitting down and recording, and there we had evidence. So when I got back there, I wasn't exactly 100% sure if it even moved. It kind of looked like it had. So when we went back and looked on the film, there it was, and I was able to put it into the video to show proof paranormal does exist. Another little simple one to use is a flashlight. Just use a flashlight, and what you do is you just kind of get it to where it's kind of out just a little bit, and the battery's not making connection. And I think this one's dead now, but there's a lot of stuff I got to get set back up again. We've not used in quite a while. But anyway, you get set up, you sit it down, and ask the spirit to touch it. And I've got videos out right now where I've had spirits do that. They touch it, it lights up, and you're able to know that there's a spirit there. So a flashlight is very useful, and something I would consider taking with me if you could. Now, look, when we first started, it was on a budget. So we were not able to get all the nice, latest high tech, whatever you want to call it. Um, so we decided to try to do what we could with what our money would allow. So like having an extra cell phone was a good thing. Fidget spinners are very inexpensive. Flashlights are not too expensive. So, I mean, things like that you can use pretty well. And also, if you use a fidget spinner, like I said, take it, put it to where, a camera's on it, maybe even place sticks beside it, and just kind of make sure it's just lined up in that one spot how you left it. And then you'll be able to get the evidence. So that's a good thing. Something that's not too expensive either is a cat ball. You turn it on, it'll flash like that. And when it's done, it'll stop. It won't do anything. You got to give it a minute. And once it does, you just sit it down. I'm going to keep moving it. But anyway, you sit it down when it's not flashing, right? And if a spirit touches it, it will light up just like that. It's interesting. I've got several videos of that's happened, especially in our shed with all of our haunted dolls. We've got a lot of haunted dolls out in our shed, and that is something that's, again, very inexpensive. Won't take much to purchase those. You can get, 5 or 6 if you want to at a time. They're not very expensive, so I would recommend a cat ball be something I would use. Another little gadget you can use is something like this. Is a FLIR camera, and basically what it does, it hooks up to your camera phone, and you just plug it in. If I can get this open, and you get it to where it plugs into your camera, and it just pops into place. And basically, what you do, well, I'll pull it back out. Anyway, what you do, you put it into your phone, and you're able to see it in infrared. And basically, what it does is it looks for temperature changes. It goes from red, and if it's colder, it goes blue. So, and sometimes you can catch an apparition. I've not been able to do that, but some people have been able to catch an apparition with these things. Just a little FLIR camera. You put it on your camera phone. It's very simple. It's an app you use. Don't take long at all. It's not very expensive, and it's something you might want to consider using when you're doing paranormal as well. Okay, so something else that's not too expensive is a K2 reader. It just, there you go, lights up. And it's supposed to be when a spirit gets close to it, it will light it up, make it flash. Basically, what it does is it's just, looking for any atmospheric changes. And when it does, it will light it up. Spirits will put their energy into it. It'll make it light, kind of like when I turned it on. It'll do that. It'll flash like that. Had that happen several times with us out in the field. Another inexpensive thing you can get, and we had a good friend, his name was Dave, and he let us borrow his at one time. That's how we really got started doing paranormal, was with one of these. It was just very simple. We sit it down to see if a spirit would light it up. Didn't always happen, but sometimes it would. And you just kind of an idea that the spirit was there, and it's just very handy. It's, again, very inexpensive and something you might want to use when you go out for the first time. Okay, so the next thing I got, there we go, is an EMF tester. This right here it uses digital, and basically when a spirit gets near it, the numbers will go, bigger the closer they are to it. And I've had this happen before. I was at the river, as a matter of fact, and when I asked a question, I can't remember what I think about, how you were murdered or something like that. Anyway, this thing spiked and went up big time. And so I've not used it that often. Here and there I have. But it did work, and when I asked the question, and the spirit got near it. It worked. It got, the numbers went up real high and everything, so I knew something was there. So this is another little gadget you can use. Not too expensive, a little more than the regular K2, but you might consider using it. Now, when you want to use something that's a little more expensive, like an S box, this right here, basically, you can put it. It's in radio mode. You go reverse, or you can go forward. Actually, either way you want to do it. But I prefer reverse, and I prefer using an AM. It just seems like it just does better when you do that. I've had spirits come through here before on this one. I had another one as an SB7. It's broke and no longer works. But this is a good upgrade. I really enjoy it. And it's just an S box. And like I say, you just run it in reverse. And you can listen for spirits to come through. You got to distinguish what is radio versus what spirits, So usually you can tell that pretty well. I mean, you can usually tell what the radio is, or, somebody talking on the radio, or music playing or something. You'll know that that's the radio, but you need to take time. If you're going to use one of these things, I would recommend just using it till you got used to knowing what radio is versus what spirits are. This is a good little handy thing to have when you go out as well. Like I say, I would take some time to learn it. I would listen to it multiple times before I started, and then you can kind of get an idea of what's radio and what's not, and then you can distinguish between the two. And another one is an SB11. It's an upgrade. It's bigger than the SB7 that I used to carry around. You can use 2 different radios at the same time. Use one if you want, but you do the same thing with this as S box. You can use it in reverse, AM and FM mode. Also, this one has a temperature gauge on it right here, and I've used that multiple times in either a shed, out in mausoleums. I've used them in cemeteries, and just different places like Hill's Bridge and places I've gone, and look for the temperature to change. I've used it in our shed several times for spirits to change the temperature on it, so I'll know they're there. They can answer questions with it. It also has a red light on it. It's right here in the front. Right now the batteries are dead in this thing too. I had to get some new batteries in it, but I'm waiting until I start to go back on the field before I start changing all the batteries and stuff. But there's a red light you can use. It's right here as well. It's very handy. Antenna right here. You can use as well. But again, you can use them in two different channels. You can use them at the same exact time if you want to, or you can just use one or the other. There's also a thing you can use for your headset, so that works. And you can mute it as well right here. Just hit that button and it shuts everything down and mutes it for a bit. And you can set your settings on how fast you want it to go in reverse or even forward. And so you just have that right here to change, and you can make it go real fast or real slow. Again, if you're going to use an SB7 or like this, an SB11, what I would recommend doing is, again, taking time to listen, understand it, and understand what's radio and what's not. Again, my biggest recommendation, not only me, but I've had friends of mine in the field as well who recommend AM mode. AM just seems to work out better. FM, there's a lot of, you catch a lot of radio stations on FM. So it's so hard to distinguish, whereas AM, you don't have near as much, so it kind of helps. So you can kind of distinguish a little bit better between the spirits and the radio. So I recommend AM on any of these devices that you use. And again, take time to learn them. All right. So here is what I use is just a regular old, I got two different cameras I use. I prefer Sony. Sony is my favorite. I've always used Sony for years. I like Sony cameras. This is just a tube camera. Very simple. It's a handy cam. And you can flip it if you need to. Bring it back this way to look at it. Whatever you got to do, you can just do like that, right? And so I do prefer this camera a little bit better than I do my other one. My other one is also a Sony. Again, that's all I use is Sony's. It's like this, and it does flip up. The battery is not, there's no battery in this one. But anyway, I do prefer the tube one over this one sometimes, but this one has got a much better, clearer picture to it. So I use it as much as possible, but sometimes I've run into some issues with this one, not recording properly. And but I love the picture. The resolutions out of this is much better than the handy cam I have here. But again, either one and whatever you want to use. I know people like Canon and other kind of things like that, but my preference is Sony, and they're not very, very expensive compared to some. I think Canon is a little bit more expensive than Sony, but I've had these cameras for about 8 years now. 8 years for this one, about 7 years from this one. And again, it's one of those things where I've never changed from it. I probably do need to upgrade cameras eventually, but as long as those work right there and they look good and still record properly, I'm not going to really worry about it too much. So whatever your preference is, whether it be a phone, whether it be a camera, just get whatever you like, stick with it and enjoy it. And again, it just, once you get comfortable recording with something, it does help a whole lot. Okay, so another one of my favorite is the Para 4C REM pod. I love this thing. I actually have one of those. You probably have seen it. It's like a little tube that sits up with the antenna like this on it. And I like it all right, but this one's so much easier to take with. The other one's so big and bulky. So this one I can throw in my bag with no problem. The antenna comes off if you need it to. If you don't want the antenna on it, just put it back on before you start to use it. And it just lights up like that. And does like that if a spirit gets near it. And so just be careful putting it around anything. Make sure it's in an open space. And you can use it that way. This thing makes loud noises. It's good to know that it works like that, because if the lights are lit up, and there's some that do just have a light and it goes off. I prefer having something that makes a noise just in case I'm having to look around and whatever. So I can know this goes off. Again, it's another thing you can use where you can use like a secondary camera, a camera phone, whatever. Set it down and use, you can walk away and just ask spirits to touch it and see what happens when you come back, see if anything did happen. I've used this several times. I've used it in cemeteries, got some good results out of it there. get great results in my shed with those haunted dolls. So it's something I definitely recommend when you're ready to get to that level, when you get your budget up or whatever, and you want to, have something good. This right here is handy. It's much better than those tube ones that kind of stand up or whatever. Easier to take with you. Throw it in your bag. It's no problem. Again, like I said, the antenna comes off and you can store it pretty easily. I do recommend a Pair 4C. I really like them. Now, in all this, I'm telling you, I'm not sponsored by anybody, or I'm not getting paid to tell you about these things. These are just things that, again, I use, and maybe it can help you out in the field when you do investigations as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, God bless. I'll see you soon.